As we've just launched our first curated collection of vintage watches for sale on the WatchGecko website, I thought it would make a great opportunity to look into one of them in more detail and compare it to its modern counterpart. These are Yema or Polymac Superman Skin Divers, with the Polymac version hailing from the 1960s and the Yema some 60 years later. For those unaware, Polymac was one of Yema's export brand names back in the day. Both with a water resistance rating of 990 feet or 300 meters, this was a watch designed to be used. Obviously the vintage one wouldn't be very good for diving anymore, but it is an impressive water resistance rating considering the age and use of acrylic crystal. These watches both measure in at 39mm across the bezel, with a lug-to-lug distance of 48mm, and so wear exceptionally well on the wrist and feel fairly contemporary considering the vintage styling. On paper, they should be near identical, especially considering that the Yema is just a modern reissue of the vintage piece. But as we'll explore in this video, small design choices really can compound into being a fairly different looking product. We'll start by diving in up close to the dial, which as you can see shares an almost exact basic design language. Characterized by the large trapezoid indexes with Arabics at the quarter markers, this is a pretty iconic skin diver design, which has been imitated many times over. The watches also share the same basic handset, although the second hand is fairly different. Looking up close, you can see a slight difference in the lume shape on the hour hand though, with the lume filling the end triangle of the hand on the modern version. It's subtle, but I think this does add a contemporary touch, although I personally prefer the original. The main difference with these dials, which ends up creating a massive impact on how it wears, is the scale of the dial. Even though the watches are the same size, the modern dial has brought the hour and minute markers in quite significantly to allow for some dead space at the edge of the dial for the crystal distortion. The scale of the dial plays a massive role in how a watch wears, and so the modern Yema actually ends up looking smaller because of this. I think it's a shame, but realistically it needed to happen, unless they wanted to use a flat crystal, which wouldn't carry the vintage feel of this dome-edged sapphire at all. Lastly, the hour markers on the vintage model are applied metal rather than printed on the dial with a white border like the current model. The white printing does aid legibility, but I feel like it doesn't quite have the character of the vintage one. Next up is the lume. The most obvious difference is the colour, with the original having a green hue and appearing slightly inconsistent in shade due to the patina. The modern version, however, has the faux-aged old radium style superluminova, which ironically doesn't actually resemble the vintage watch at all, although I do think the beige looks nicer. As you would expect, the lume on the vintage watch doesn't last quite as long as its younger siblings. Despite sharing the same dimensions, the cases on these watches are fairly different. The vintage version has chamfers on all four lugs, as well as a significant curve down to hug the wrist. This makes it so that the dial and bezel look much more tall than on the modern version, where the lugs are more simple and don't really curve at all. The design choices made on the modern case mean that the case thickness is more hidden on the wrist, as the case back sits under the lugs rather than at the same level as the end links. Both the crowns are fairly similar in shape, apart from the vintage one not being signed, although it is hard to know if this is the original or not. They are easy to grip and screw in smoothly. However, on the modern watch you'll notice the addition of the bezel lock system, which prevents the bezel from turning when the crown is screwed in. The bezels are fairly different in design, with the modern watch using a sapphire crystal topped insert. This means that there does need to be a metal lip on either side of the insert to set it in, so the insert ends up being narrower and in turn gives the watch slightly less presence on the wrist, a similar effect to the dial design choices. This style of insert does give it a nice glossy look though, matching to the gloss dial very well as definitely looking more premium than the standard aluminium insert on the vintage watch. Both watches also have the same iconic Yema scales bracelet, with the vintage being the original from the 1960s. This is an exceptionally striking design, which really is unlike any other bracelet on the market, making either of these watches a great buy for someone really into the quirky skin diver style and who values having something that not many others would. I hope you've enjoyed this quick comparison of the Yema Superman, old and new. Let us know which one you prefer in the comments below. Does vintage charm take the win, or do you prefer modern reliability? If you'd like to learn more about either of these watches, you can check the links in the description as well as in the pinned comment. Cheers.